I'll just set the context real quick. So like, the book of Numbers is really about what happens kind of after they get out of Sinai. So the book of Exodus is them leaving Egypt and getting into Sinai. And then they stay there for the first 2 chapters of the book of Numbers, so they all get counted. So that's why it's called the book of Numbers. It's kind of sad because they take a bunch of censuses. So like 600,000 people, according to the book, that left Egypt and are wandering the wilderness. And there's kind of 3 kind of sections. There's the first section where they're at Sinai and they get all these like rules about the tent of meeting and the tabernacle, and then they're on the move, and we're at the beginning of the on the move section right here, chapter 11. And then they stay at a place for a while, and it gets complicated, and then they move, and then they get to another place, and it gets complicated for very different reasons. There's a talking donkey in there, there's the end of Numbers. We're not going to do that in worship, but the story of the Bible is really interesting. So there's this back and forth tension, and of course Moses is trying to lead a group of 600,000 people, right? Now let's remember that is Moses leading people? No, they're being led by what? Pillar. This giant pillar of fire and smoke. But for whatever reason, throughout the text of Numbers, and honestly throughout the book of Exodus as well, everybody just keeps forgetting this, which makes me wonder how obvious is the pillar of smoke and fire if it's there all the time, but people cannot notice it. And maybe that has less to do with the pillar of fire and more to do with how when something is always true, we stop noticing.
Not linear.
Right. How when something is always there, we just take it for granted and we just become like get back to the horizon and stop being in awe. Right? And I think that's actually really true for us as humans. It's so easy for us to get caught up in the down here-ness of things that we forget to stay in awe and wonder. How many times would a fight, a squabble, a dispute you're having, something that's making it hard to be in a relationship with somebody, be just like mixed if you put it in the context of reality? Or how hard that is to do.
Sorry,
Moses is trying to figure out how to bring these people back into the context of God. That's kind of what I think about it. He's not necessarily leading the people, he's like reminding the people.
This is the message.
Because they're just right here.
Are you still with me?
Kind of like,
Well, they're asking that
hey, everybody thinks that we don't want to.
Sure.
Everybody thinks,
Because they had her knee.
But it makes sense because all this exactly, because the wilderness is this place of
Everyone.
they're eating manna. Now, let's not get started on the fact that there is food in the desert that's provided to them every single day. Without them having to do anything about it, there's always enough, there's never too much.
Type, you can type there.
And they're already tired of it, and it's been like maybe a month, a couple of months that they've been in Sinai, they've run out of all of that fun food, and so now they're starting to remember, oh man, it's melons, forever. It's like when watermelon shows up at the grocery store for the first time in the spring. Oh my God, it's a very good watermelon, but it's a watermelon nonetheless. But we don't have that problem anymore, do we? We can get watermelon pretty much every time.
How you were able to, oh, it was right here. And then I clicked on the chat.
It's scary to be in this insecure place. And all the people are rightly terrified. Why God keeps getting mad at them for being that way seems a little disproportionate to me because it literally is always happening. We are always afraid of insecurity. We're always afraid of not having a secure body, a secure home, a secure community to live in. Which then begs this question, how do we create security? What are some of the things that we do now in the 21st century to create security for ourselves, for our families, for our communities? What are some of the things that we do?
Buy more than we need and store them.
Buy more than we need and store them. And every time there's some kind of natural disaster, all of a sudden there's no toilet paper to be found anywhere. Somebody filled up a second room.
During COVID, toilet paper was stolen regularly during COVID and.
Sure. And probably wasn't necessarily needed, it was just in case, right? Just in case, what do we do? We create surplus. What else do we do to create security?
She said she'll try next week.
Insurance, which is another kind of form of surplus, right? We're buying in so that we'll have this as we need it, right? The difference between insurance and surplus is that it's a shared risk, right? That's the idea of insurance. So we all buy into a common pool and then it goes to whoever needs it. That's the concept anyway. Before it gets scary and creates wealthy people, right? That is a little bit of a deviation from the concept of insurance. What else do we do to create security? What? Stocks, bonds, investments, right? We're gonna store up, well, we take this money in a bucket underneath the house, it doesn't grow, but if I store it here, now it'll make money. But I'm still kind of just storing assets. But something that's not storing resources,
They're from
Relationships in the hope that they'll take care of you. Like,
relationships, and the hope that they'll take care of you if you can. So you only make relationships with people that are able-bodied and well-apportioned.
yeah, that's pretty much how I roll. No, that is a form of security.
That is a form of
Where there is, a mindfulness about, is your entire friend and family group older than you and needing your care? Is there anyone there in for you?
Ooh, that's a good philosophy to bring to why we in intergenerational space is that am I going to be the one that's going to be caring for and securing, or are there other people coming up?
I'm gonna do a smiley face.
You know, it's funny, I talk to a lot of times when folks are dying, especially like matriarchs, older women in the family, they have a lot of anxiety about being cared for because it violates their identity as somebody who cares for others, right? And they have to be reminded constantly, yeah, and do you remember all those people that you cared for? Did you look down on them for needing their care and support? Did you think that they were less than because they needed a ride, because they didn't drive in the dark, because of whatever?
I'm gonna say, please tell me.
So their answer is no, of course not. That made me life to be of service. I wish I could be of service like that. And so it's like, oh yeah, now I know I want someone else to be of service. I'm providing service by allowing them to take care of me. And I think that relational shift is a shift towards that ideal of insurance, right? Where we all put in together collectively to care for the most needy among us, versus that idea of surplus, where I'm just storing up so that I can use it. What's one other way to create security as a people?
Shut the door against other people.
Shut the door against other people. Kind of another way of that surplus idea is how do I guard it, secure it, protect it?
Take care of ourselves.
Take care of ourselves. Why is that a form of security?
Because if you don't take care of yourself, then you're gonna end up, needing care and depending on somebody else.
Sure. So there are things you can do for yourself that can allow you to then also be of service, but also at some point we're going to be dependent. We're going to be in need of other people. We can't take care of ourselves completely, right? That ends up being, in some ways, that surplus mindset. Like, how can I have enough to manage and control every possible outcome? Well, what's interesting about this is the ways of surplus are also the ways of scarcity. If we think about the ways that we provide security through surplus, they're also exactly the same ways that scarcity is created. And I'll explain it this way. If you're building up a surplus, think about toilet paper during COVID as an example. Everybody who's building up a surplus is creating scarcity, right? And the more fear of scarcity there is, the more scramble to create surplus, and it's this vicious cycle. Right? This way of creating security through surplus creates an attitude, an ethic of fear of scarcity that drives even further this divide between the people that have the ability and resources to create surplus and protect it, and the people that don't have the ability and resources to create surplus. And this is where the statement by Jesus becomes really uncomfortable. There's a point in time when Jesus said, look, all who have more will be given to them. And those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away from them. Now, sometimes we read this as this comes out of the parable of the talents, and we think this is about cultivating our talents, but he's actually describing the way that surplus and scarcity work. That if you have more, you put it in the stock market, you invest it, it makes more money, your money becomes more money. But if you have nothing, as more of this scarcity happens, you lose even more of what you have. So one of the things that our conference is doing right now is putting forward a resolution that's going to happen at an annual meeting to oppose all progressive tax structures in Washington State. Washington State has one of the worst progressive tax systems in the country. And what that means is that instead of taxing relative to the resources that people have, expecting people to contribute to the pool together in a way that's equitable, we have a tax structure that taxes everybody the same. Right, so like the sales tax is a good example of this. Everybody pays sales tax, but if you have very little money, that's a higher percentage of your total income than somebody that has a significant amount of wealth. That's what a regressive tax structure is, and Washington State has
In the back.
leading regressive tax structures. Exactly. Everybody has that sort of basic level of need. And so sometimes when we create security, we actually end up maintaining this idea of scarcity. And this idea of scarcity is one of the things that's so threatening to the concept of covenant. Because covenant is this idea that this is who and how I'm going to be in the world, regardless of how the world works. But what's the first thing that makes you let go of some of your kind of ethics or your standards? You're anxious that you're not going to have enough. Right? Once you get scared that we're not going to have enough, there's not going to be enough, I'm not going to be able to take care of myself, well, I can start compromising some of my ethics to secure myself. Because ultimately, right, what you want, what you need is to be secure, to survive. And an ethic of scarcity is threatening to a covenantal community. And so, of course, people are freaking out. Here they are in the middle of the desert. They have just what they can carry with them. They've used up most of their resources. All of their gold, right, that they had advocated for themselves, they kept in the ears of their wives and their daughters. All that stuff, they stashed away that little bit of surplus. Right, what happened to it? Actually, yeah, that's right. They made this golden calf, and when Moses came down, he smashed the whole thing into powder, mixed it into their water, and made them drink it. So they had sparkle food for a while. But think of what that does. All my security is now in the house. Right? Like symbolically, how powerful is that, right? Like, all right, now you have to trust God. You don't have any other choices. Unless you want to go digging through there, panning for gold, I don't think you're in there. There's not enough water out there to make that terrible. So how are we going to move together in this space of insecurity when we're still so socialized into this surplus way of creating security? And now we're someone where we don't have a surplus. Well, we got this guy Moses, and he's supposed to be the one figuring it out. He's the one with the surplus of spirit from God. He's the one who's anointed to lead all of us. So we're going to go to him, and he's going to fix it all. He's going to figure it out. And just think for a second about how absolutely impossible Moses' situation is. He's leading 600,000 people through the desert. So he's not leading them. The pillar of fire that they conveniently forgetting is actually leading them. And they bring all their complaints, all their concerns to him. Now, if you've ever watched 20 people bring all their complaints and concerns to you, and then multiply that by 30,000, like this is where we're at. And so it says in the text that he goes to God and he says, why are you doing this to me? Did I burn all these people? Are they all my responsibility? And God's kind of like, well, I mean, that was the deal from the beginning. This doesn't change. But I see where you're at. Gather up the leaders, gather up the elders. And elders are just, it's not a description of someone's age, it's a description of their relationships, their connections to other people. right? An elder is somebody that's esteemed in the community. I think it says in the text, instead of as a judge of the people, an arbiter of the people, somebody who people trust to help make these decisions. I was thinking about Kathy with her sister and that the leader of that class having the authority, being basically an elder in the community to settle that dispute. So he says, gather up all these people, or Moses gathers up all the people. And God says, I'm going to pour out the Spirit on all. And so you might be thinking that like a piece of the Spirit that's on Moses gets apportioned out. But all the commentaries I've read, it's more like you can't diminish a flame by lighting another candle. It's more that kind of spreading out the Spirit. And when they say that they prophesy, it's the literal Greek is that it rushed forth. And I think of this in like the sense that there was something about being called to be part of the leadership of this community, to articulate a different place of security that like changed these folks. That all of a sudden something different was coming out of them. And maybe they had been leading this surplus mentality. Right? You remember when the man came, they tried to gather up the story for later and what happened to it? They got all mealy, they got all gross, they got infested. There was no surplus in God's world. Somehow God's world has abundance without surplus. And so these leaders, they get the Spirit of God rests upon them. And somehow they're transformed. We don't know exactly how. It doesn't really say what happens. But we know that conflict is always going to happen with people. And so then this question, I think, this issue is trying to respond to this question: how do we stay one nation together? 600,000 people, or America, what, 330 million, 340 million people? I'm going to come today saying, you think Moses had power? How is this people going to stay one people? How is this people going to be a covenant people? How is America going to be a covenant space when we feel this profound amount of insecurity and we are so habituated to surplus producing security? And what it's producing in our community is just more scarcity, more anxiety. Covenant is the center of transformed life. Covenant is the space where we decide this is who we're going to be, regardless of how the world seems to work. This is how I'm going to be in a relationship, regardless of how it looks out there. Because we can be in a place of surplus and still be fearful, right? But when we're in a place of relationship, where the resources are pooled and we know that we all have a shared access to this space. And think about church. I mean, what's your impact of being part of a church community? What does it mean for you to be part of this space, a member of this community together? How does it impact your sense of security?
Well, you have a center.
You have a center, a place to go to. Draws you together.
Right.
Support. Sure. And you may not have the same level of relationship with everybody. You may not have the same level of intimacy or connection. You might not know as much about your life. But that sense of welcome and like, we'll figure it out is a foundational piece of the covenant. Like, we come together and say, we're here for each other. We may not all have the same skill sets, the same abilities, the same connection, but we'll figure it out.
It gives you additional reason for being.
Gives you additional reason for being. Say it a little bit more.
I think when I was a teenager, I was walking home one day and I said, all I have is family, church, and school. Family, church, and school. There must be something else. And then I realized that a lot of people don't have church as part of their lives. And it would just be work and home, work and home. And that the existence of church in my life makes that as like a triumvirate that works for my good as well as other people's good.
Sure, it creates that third space that they talk about all the time, right? And oftentimes out in the world, the third space is just a commercial space that you can go and occupy, right? It's a bookstore, it's a coffee shop, it's a whatever, it's a park, right? But it's a place that you go to that's an alternative place for you to be. But church ends up being more of a relational space, where it's not just about the place itself, it's about the people, the connections, the opportunity to be known and seen and to know and see other people, which is an additional type of security. You know, how many of us live in neighborhoods where we don't really know the people that live on our block? Where we don't really know who we can go to for help, who would know our name, who knows about our circumstances, our family life. I was literally at the beach the other day and I walked and I stepped on a razor clamp and cut my foot. And I was like bleeding as I'm walking across and I was starting to get freaked out. So it was like 5:30 and I had quite a distance to walk before I get back to my car. So I was really nervous. I didn't have any first aid equipment or anything with me. I stupidly taken my shoes and socks off. I wasn't looking carefully enough. And this was a beach that has a lot of razor clamps. So I just stepped on one and cut the side of my heel. And there was this young man and a woman who were like just off and they were walking back towards the shore as I was. And I said, hey, I know you don't love me and I don't know you. I don't need help right now. I think I'm being bad and hurt. I just want to let you know in case I get back to the shore and I can handle this. And he turned away from me. And led his girlfriend away from me in this other direction. And I was kind of scared, like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me, right? But I get back to the shore and I realized, like, okay, I can like fold my socks over a couple of times and get the scandal and get my boots on and tie them up real tight so it holds everything together. And I'm not as scared anymore now that I've got the scandal, got my boots back on and get back to the house. But I remember thinking, God, how sad must it be to see somebody who, like, is your same basic, like, similar age, we're the same race and class, all the normal things that you would expect people to be freaked out by. It's just somebody who might be hurt was asking for help. And you have such a sense of, like, scarcity, like, I don't know that I have enough time, energy, ability to just make sure that they're all right. I felt bad for him. And I think about how common it is that we're out there in the world with this sense of scarcity, this fear that there's not enough. And I think about the people in the wilderness in Israel, and I think, what would change if we really trusted that God was with us all the time? You know, I don't know why we can't look up and see, but I wonder if it's just that it's so hard for us to remember and really trust that God is actually with us all the time. And what would be different about how we move through the world if we had that kind of security that we could really trust?
I trust in God, and I want to know if you've had a tetanus shot in the last 10 years. Go get current if it's been less than 1. Please do that. You're welcome.
That's actually a good example of what you asked about. I mean, we can create things together that we couldn't create separately, and we have a pool of knowledge that we wouldn't all have individually. So it's a very different third place than sitting at a bar or a library or a park or anything else, because we're actually interacting and we can do more than we could if it was just individual in some way.
That's right. And we don't have to think about our abundance just in terms of material resources. That knowledge is a huge piece. I mean, how many people in this church have been benefited by the fact that we have had a doctor in the house for the last 20 years? I mean, how many people that are living outside have come to me and said, oh my God, is that lady there, that lady doctor? Is that really have a question for her about and I'm like, come on Sunday, you'll see. She knows about it, or whatever, right? But like the pool of knowledge that we have together, I mean, how many times has it been beneficial to have each of us with our own unique past, our experiences, our connections and relationships, our experiences with different kinds of people in the room together to aggregate that resource. There isn't a surplus, right? It's that sense of security that we create together by showing up for each other, by being willing to offer our insight, our wisdom. I really believe that it is that trusting in God's everlasting presence. God's always with us. God's going to make a way with us together. That it creates the ability for us to say, okay, regardless of how this looks, regardless of how this works, regardless of how this guy is treating me, I'm going to be this person today. I'm going to show up this way today. I'm going to be a covenantal person. And I think that our church community is a community that's a covenantal community. Who are we going to be together? How are we going to be? It's not a contract. I'm not going to hold you to it. You said that we were this. Right? That's a contract. But we say that we're going to do this. Each of us comes and shows up and says, yep, that's who I am. That's the center of gravity for a church community. And I think when God pours out God's Spirit on all of these elders and leaders, God's trying to remind them that's what's going to hold us together. Not just one guy doing all this work, but all of us deciding this is who we're going to be together. Yeah.
Is he pouring in God each of days? They pouring it out on all of them, or just on elders and leaders?
In this one it says on elders and leaders. Now, when we get to the Spirit as understood by Jesus, it's poured out on all of humanity. But in this particular story in Numbers, it's on elders and leaders.
I'd say that piece is missing.
There's a number of pieces that are missing. Just as a hilarious side note, last point on the sermon, if you read a little bit further in Numbers 11, God says, I'll give you meat, not just today, not just tomorrow, not just for a week, but for a whole month. You're going to have 12 around your nostrils, and you're going to be sick. Which I just think is kind of fun. Oh, okay, I'll give you what you want. And